Talkin Cougars is brought to you by Safeway. Come see what's fresh.
Welcome into Talkin Cougars, episode 12. Your Cougs are 8-1, climbing the ranks of the CFP and all the ranking lists in the top 25 bump. They got after the Aggies 49-28. It was pretty dominating there on the Palouse. It wasn't perfect, right? They didn't run away with it in the first half, but they sure took control in the third quarter, which was something they've struggled with all year. Overall, a really good performance from Washington State.
Yeah, it was fun to watch. Like you mentioned, didn't take full control until the second half, but they did score in their first three possessions. And, Utah State did a good job hanging around and staying in the fight, but that's what well-coached teams are going to do. But eventually, the better football team is going to come out on top, and I think that's what we saw. But I also love the respect that we're getting in the rankings, man. I was hoping Colorado took an L. Maybe that was going to help us, but they won this weekend. But you control what you can control. And offensively, it was a great performance. They ran the ball, 40-plus times on the ground. They were not playing when it came to establishing the run. And that's going to lead me straight to my offensive MVP. We got Parker, man, 11 carries, 145 yards. This young man had a 70-plus yard touchdown. He looked like the guy we saw the first couple of weeks of the season. We felt like he was going to be a major contributor, but every game has his own identity. So I think, Arbuckle calls the game that he needs to win. But, man, this weekend, it was all about the ground game, and the freshman reminded people why we were so high on him earlier in the season.
I was really happy to see it because we've talked about throughout the season, the running game, right? The yards per game is pretty high, but it's masked a little bit, right, by John Mateer's running ability. In the middle part of the season, the running backs have not been as productive as we saw at the start of the season. And you went into the game against Utah State and you knew that you had to run the football. They were second to last in the country in yards per game rushing given up. And I tell you what, if Washington State wasn't able to establish a run this week, I don't know that they ever would. But to your point, Ben Arbuckle did just that. Came out, they hammered the ball with Wayshawn Parker, Javensky Schlembaker, Leo Pulalasi. They all got touches, but it was Wayshawn Parker, like you said, who really did it. He had a couple big records there. Longest run since one of our buddies, Chris Ivory, in 2006. And the most yards rushing by a freshman since our friend Dwight Tardy did it against, I believe, UCLA in that same 2006 season. So that was fun to see Wayshawn move up the record book, so to speak, for those running backs. For me, the offensive MVP is still number 10, partially because you already picked Wayshawn Parker, but John Mateer was incredibly efficient. 4 touchdown passes, didn't throw for a ton of yards, only 179 yards, but he really didn't have to, right? And then he had another rushing touchdown on the ground. It wasn't the highest number of yards he's had total, 55 rushing, 179 passing, but those 5 touchdowns. I think now he's number 2 behind Cam Ward in total touchdowns on the season. Mateer was fantastic. He looked in rhythm passing. It goes to show you what a great running game does for a quarterback when it comes to dropping back and throwing the football.
Yeah, I think with Mateer, it's about just being efficient at this point of the season. Take care of the football, don't turn it over. Be efficient in the pass game. He was 18 of 24, I believe. Be a threat when it comes to running the football. Just stress a defense out in as many ways as possible, and that's exactly what Mateer does. It's fun watching him grow because he's had more explosive games through the air, but he looked like a mature quarterback this game. There weren't too many throws where, I winced a little bit saying, he shouldn't have thrown that pass. It seemed like he understood the assignment. And it's always great when you can get the run game going. That takes pressure off the QB, even though he is involved in the running game to an extent. I also want to big up Kyle Williams, man. 3 touchdowns on the day.
Right.
We've been waiting on him to have another explosive game when it comes to scoring. Hudson has kind of taken the charge over the past few weeks when it comes to getting inside the end zone. But Kyle Williams continues to be a steady contributor for this ball club. And it feels like, B, that they're starting to peak at the right moment. Right towards the end of the season, where you have games that you can and should win, they're going out and they're executing at a high level.
No, there's no doubt about it. The other thing I'll say about John Mateer, no interceptions. That's 3 games in a row without an interception. So he's improving in his decision-making for sure. And I think to your point, the receiving group is continuing to get better for sure. Defensively, I thought it was a pretty solid performance. We knew Utah State was explosive, right? Averaging over 300 yards passing per game. That was top 10 in the country. Veteran quarterback Spencer Petras. They had a bunch of injuries, so you're kind of wondering what you would get from that Utah State offense. In the end, the defense showed up. They had some turnovers. They did enough for sure to get on top. My MVP bump was Kapena Gushikin, the nickelback number 4, had an interception in the red zone, and it was kind of when Utah State was driving a little bit, and you were thinking they were maybe going to stay in the game. He made a beautiful play. He was playing the low. He's the flat defender, right? They tried to run a corner route on top of him in towards the end zone, and he just sunk back. He kind of baited the quarterback into the throw as soon as the ball was in the air, sprinted back, high pointed that thing, and was able to turn that ball over. I thought it was a really impressive play. And Gushikin's been a solid contributor all year for Washington State, regardless of stats. He's kind of that stalwart, that nickelback that can play coverage, that can step up in the running game as well.
I love the versatility of his game. I mean, you just described it. He can help out in the run game. He's good in the pass. He's a savvy DB out there, how he baits the quarterback into some throws. I love that. I'm going to go with Buddha, man. Buddha had 7 tackles, and it seems like he's just consistent. Big ups to Augusta, who did have a sack, but I'm going Buddha just because of his consistency. He's where he is supposed to be. There are some guys that affect the game without making a play. We're just doing his job. And I feel like that's what I see more and more out of Buddha. And then you throw in just the stats. He did have a tackle, had a TFL as well. It just seems like every week my eyes find him. When you watch a football game, you're not going to see everybody at one time. If someone tells you they see everything happening at one time, they're a liar. You cannot do that in football. Sometimes, what am I going to look at? Coverage this time. I'm going to look at the D-line. I'm going to look at the second level. Every now and then, I look at Buddha, and he hardly disappoints with just his technique, his eyes, and just his discipline. And I'm sure Jake Dickert loves the discipline that this young man plays with. Extremely reliable, and just a guy you can count on every single week.
No doubt about it. The only knock on Buddha is that he didn't have an interception, which would have been 3 in a row for my man, who had one against Hawaii and then had one last week. I think, again, at San Diego State, for Washington State, you mentioned David Gusta. That's a really interesting stat that I saw. He had a sack. Do you know that's his first full sack in his entire career? He had a half sack coming in to this season, and that's his first full sack. For as much pressure as he gets on the quarterback, 14 pressures on the year, hasn't gotten home by himself. I thought that was awesome. He was really fired up for it, and he's a really talented player, deserved to get one.
Man, that's a perfect example of just the bigs getting no love. They affect the game in so many ways, and my man's getting his first full sack of the year. It's almost disrespectful, man. We got to give our guy Gus some love, because he's definitely one of the guys on the defensive line that just collapses the pocket, is good in the run game, and then someone that you can rely upon. There's several guys in that defense that I feel like we can talk about every single week, but we try to mix it up a little bit and throw some guys out there. But yeah, big ups to Augusta.
Yeah, and I noticed, Bump, I'm sure as you watched the game too, you had Buda Aluta as your MVP. I mean, he's been so good at that linebacker position. You're also seeing more guys rotating in. You got Parker McKenna, who's the transfer from Portland State, who's getting in there. He's a little bit faster, so I think he provides more in the blitz game. We've seen Keith Brown, remember the Oregon and Louisville transfer. He's come in. You obviously have Kyle Thornton, but now with Buda and those other guys, you have a group of 4 linebackers that feel like they can all really make an impact in different ways.
Yeah, man, depth is important. When we come back, we're going to talk about Mateer. Can he continue the magic? We'll break that all down next on Talkin' Cougars.
This segment is presented by Cougs First. Think Cougs First for products, services, and hiring.
Welcome back to Talkin' Cougars. I'm Michael Bumpus with my guy Alex Brink. It's time to dive deeper into some numbers. One, Mateer. He is now still second in the FBS when it comes to total touchdowns behind Cam Ward. Cam Ward in Miami has one more game than John Mateer. So there's an opportunity for my guy to catch him. I know it's about the team wins, B. I know it's about going 9-1 this week, or going 1-0, as Coach Digger says every single week. But it's nice when you have a WSU quarterback doing some things that we haven't seen before and should be getting some national recognition. How is he able to do this, man? Every single week, he finds ways just to contribute at a high way and get in the end zone.
Yeah, it seems like he does it a little bit different kind of every time too. And honestly, this was probably one of his most balanced games, where he was throwing the football very effectively in rhythm. He was running the football. You know what I noticed? I thought was interesting. It feels like Washington State's gone to the Baltimore Ravens model of running the quarterback. You ever watch, right, Lamar Jackson? You know how he's used on short yardage, like 3rd and 1, and then in the red zone, right? Because they don't want to have Jackson take a beating out there. So they design the quarterback runs in key moments. And that feels like what Ben Arbuckle's moved to is, short yardage, you're getting John Mateer. Down inside the 10-yard line, guess who you're getting? John Mateer, right? When you got to have it. But that eliminates some of the hits on Mateer, and he's able to focus in the pass game. You talked about Kyle Williams and kind of the game he had 3 touchdowns. Remember that touchdown when he caught that bender over the middle and John Mateer threw that beautiful second window throw, great anticipation, knew where his guy was at. I thought that was a really great example of John Mateer taking a step forward in the passing game. Feels like he's very comfortable working through his progressions. He's delivering the ball on time. Honestly, the only blemish was my man should have slid, and he decided to go get some extra yards, and he fumbled. And I told him after the game, I said, "What are you doing, man? You got to slide." He's like, "Man, I don't like to slide." I said, "I get it, but you got to get down, man."
It's that young bull mentality. He doesn't want to slide. I love how you pointed out him anticipating the throws. As you know, being a quarterback at the highest level, that you don't throw it when guys are open. You throw them open. You throw it to the spot that they're going to be, and that shows great anticipation. I think earlier on in the season, he's sitting back in the pocket waiting for guys to come open, and a lot of the times they were coming open. That offense was explosive. There wasn't much film on material, but as teams start to try to figure you out, they put you in some situations that make it tougher to read coverages. So the fact that he is throwing guys open, throwing to spots, and letting receivers run to it, I think is beautiful, and it shows, again, the maturation of John Mateer. Now, if we can just get him to slide, then I think we'd be okay. But there's somebody else in this offense that we need to talk about a bit more, and that's the freshman running back, Parker, man. Over 500 yards this year. Quietly still having a good year. It feels like we lost some of the explosive plays that we got earlier on in the season, but when you look at his season in totality, he's putting together a nice freshman campaign.
No, it really is. And he kind of came out like gangbusters against Portland State, who, frankly, is not a great defensive football team. And he's able to, he scores a rushing touchdown, big rushing touchdown. He catches a long touchdown, and, he's shades of Max Borghi, right? Scores twice in his first game. It was a really impressive debut. And he followed it up with a couple more good performances. Then that middle part of the season, you wonder if kind of the freshmen or the side of being a freshman caught up to him, whether it's fatigue, whether it's, new opponents, more playbook, whatever it is. And he had some, appearances where he had less than 40 yards rushing. Against Fresno, he had over 60, but most of it came on that last drive, which was a 4-minute drill. And then finally, he explodes this week against Utah State and just had a monster performance. I think part of it's scheme too, Bump. I talked about this on the broadcast. I saw a lot more zone running scheme, right? Less of the gap running scheme, counters, less linemen pulling. And you know this, right? As an offensive coordinator, when you have those pulling linemen, sometimes it slows your running back up, right? He's got to wait for the lineman to come around. That touchdown run that Wayshawn Parker had on that first play out of half was straight zone run with the tight end crossing the formation, right, and knifing behind to kick out the defensive end. And Wayshawn can just hit that thing full speed. I think he has great vision. I think he has good speed. And when he sees a hole, he can go. But if he shuffles his feet in the backfield, I think it slows him down and he's not quite as effective. So I think scheme is a big part of the change as well.
Yeah, I've always been a fan. Obviously, I love me some good counter. I love me power. I love me some trap. But when you have a running back who's a field type of running back, I think you have to lean on that zone. Also love the way that they use the tight end in the zone, showing that split zone, taking care of the end. Guarantee you they're going to slip him out the backfield, fake the chip off the end and get the tight end involved there. The zone kind of opens a lot of things up, and when you're dealing with a young running back who, again, like I mentioned, is more of a field type of running back, 100%. I think you lean on the zone. And I love the comparison you made of Mateer in the Baltimore Ravens. Because this is why Lamar Jackson is having the season that he's having, because he has a running back there who is a legit threat. If they can get Parker going for the next, 2 or 3 games of the season and become a legit threat, it's going to open up the pass games. I think we're going to see even more explosive plays. There's going to be more room for Kyle Williams to go out there and do his thing, for Mathers in the red zone to continue his efficiency, and for Hudson as well. So it's almost like we're seeing it all come together slowly but surely, and you start putting all the pieces together. You understand what Arbuckle in this offense, what they're trying to do, and what they are capable of doing later on this season.
Right, and if you remember, we talked about at home, they've averaged more than 50 points per game. They almost did it again, 49 points, 482 yards of total offense. They're getting there some different ways, right? 300 yards rushing, less passing, but it really was an efficient offensive performance, a really dominating one that, I feel like this offense needed. They needed to go out and execute. And if you think about it, Bump, this game could have gotten way worse for Utah State because the Cougs had an onside kick, if you remember early in the game, that they executed perfectly, and the refs called blocking before 10 yards. I mean, I've never seen that called. That happens on every onside kick. And by the letter of the law, I guess it is a penalty. It never gets called. I can't believe it got called. So they could have gotten another possession there. And then Utah State picked up another possession on their fake punt when the Cougs went and got called for PI, which is another rule that is totally, I don't understand, because I watched an NFL game that same week where they PI'd the receiver on a punt and it didn't get called because of the very reason that nobody knows it's a pass because it's a punt. That's why the rule is written the way it is. Anyway, I think Washington State could have been even worse for Utah State. Overall, a really good performance.
Well, you make sure you write your letter to the commissioner, to whoever you need to talk to.
Doing it.
And get some dang answers to all this stuff. All right, when we come back, we're going to break down a play here on Talkin Cougars.
This segment is brought to you by Cougar Collective.
Let's see if offensively they can get going a little bit quicker here in the second half.
Wayshawn Parker, the running back, the snack, the give to Wayshawn, up the middle, first down and more, across midfield, he's off to the races, it's a foot race at this point, 20, 10, no one's touching him, touchdown Wayshawn Parker, 75 yards, what a way to start the second half for Washington State.
That is exactly what the doctor ordered in the run game right there, Chris. That's the quick hitter you want. Cooper Mathers comes across the formation. He kicks out the backside end. You run a straight zone scheme. No lineman pulling. And that way, Wayshawn Parker doesn't have to shuffle his feet and wait. He can hit the whole 100 miles an hour. And once he gets the second level, speed to burn, and number 21 is gone for 6.
Back now on Talkin Cougars, and it's time for our weekly play breakdown. And talked a lot about the man, Wayshawn Parker, number 21, the young freshman. We got to talk about that run he had coming out at halftime. Went to the house, 75 yards, Bump. What'd you see?
Man, beautiful. We just spent some time talking about how much we love the zone. So let me set it up for you. 1st and 10, like B mentioned, a 75-yard touchdown. You have Mathers in the slot to the left of John Mateer. You have Wayshawn Parker in the backfield with Mateer to his right side. You're going to motion Mathers over in a split zone. You're supposed to kick out the end. It's kind of different for Mathers on this play right here because there's an odd front, so 3 down linemen. So what he has to do is a tough task of either helping out his tackle on that end or getting up to that second level to that will linebacker. He gets caught up in the mix, doesn't actually get to that second level, but still helps out the end. So what that motion does, it gets the eyes of the safeties and the linebackers there. Alert jet sweep, it might shift their strength. So once he motions over, boom, you snap the football and Wayshawn goes the other way. The key block here is the center. The center combos down on the zero tech, then he gets up to the Mike linebacker. You got bodies on bodies, and Parker just gets downhill and uses that God-given speed that he has. It's beautiful sometimes. I've never lost a game on paper. I've out-schemed teams all the time, B. But then you got Jimmys and Joes out there. You got 18 to 19-year-olds, and mistakes do happen, and that's the difference in some games. On this play right here, everything worked to perfection, and that's why you got the result you got.
Well, I'll tell you what, I was up there in the booth with Chris King, and I swear as soon as Wayshawn touched the ball, I had my hands in the air and said touchdown. And it's partly because of what you just said, which was the execution of the offensive line. Devin Kalani, the center, did such a nice job on that combo block that you could see that hole open up. And then S.A. Pole at left tackle sealed that end. And so that front side gap was so open that as soon as Parker put his foot in the ground, I mean, it was off to the races, right? And so, again, super well executed. Again, I think the scheme I mentioned in an earlier segment of going to more zone and less guard tackle pull or guard tackle counter or guard tight end counters is really effective for a guy like Parker who can just see the hole, hit it, and go. And then even for the linemen, they've done a really good job all season in the zone scheme of getting to the second level. I think Devin Kalani, who's a first-year starter replacing Connor Gomnis, who started for a long time for Washington State, has been a real bright spot on that offensive line. And it's a group that keeps getting better. They've had some turnover a little bit with Fa'alili Fa'amoy coming back off of injury. They've had to figure out whether it's Christian Hilborn or Rod Tia-Lavea at left guard. And they bounce back and forth, but Devin Kalani has been a very good player and really continued to improve. And you see on this play his ability to execute in a big moment. And Wayshawn Parker, he's the beneficiary of some great blocking by that offensive line.
Yeah, this is a teach tape right here. When at the end of the season, when the new guys come in, when they start to install this play right here, they're going to pull up this film and say, look, guys, this is how you block this play against the odd front. Everyone did exactly what they were supposed to do. I wish I could speak to Arbuckle and ask him, okay, what do you have off of this? Because teams are going to see that motion. They're going to say alert zone and make their adjustments. What plays do you have off of this? But I also liked how Parker was able to get downhill right now. That's also why I like zone, because your running backs, they know I have to press this B gap. I'm pressing the B gap, and if nothing is there, then I'm looking for the cutback. But as soon as he got the football, like you mentioned, Kalani, the center, did a good job of getting to that second level. He saw it and was able to use that speed and get downhill. It was just well executed. Every now and then, as a coach, as an offensive line coach, as a running back coach, as a tight ends coach, you pat yourself on the back and say, okay, we got these guys to really understand how to block this play, and it showed up.
There's no doubt about it. It's going to be important coming up. New Mexico's a team that they play this week who gives up a lot of yards on the ground. Let's see if the running game can keep going. We'll break down the Lobos when we come back.
This segment is brought to you by Flat Stick Pub, local craft beer, mini golf, and old school fun.
This is Talkin Cougars. I'm Michael Bumpus with Alex Brink. Let's take a look at New Mexico, the opponent for this week. And the first thing you and I notice, B, when breaking down this team is that they run an interesting offense. Enlighten the people with what you saw so far on film.
Yeah, it's a really unique offense. I mean, it's got spread routes. I mean, it's shotgun, it's spread, but at times it kind of looks like almost like the single wing bump if you can go way back in the old days. They got an extra tackle sometimes in a wing position, a lot of unbalanced formations. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to add extra gaps because they have an electric player at the quarterback position in Devin Dampier. This young man's got 13 rush touchdowns on the year. He has more total yards than our very own John Mateer. He's got over 800 yards rushing. He can really go. He's a decent passer, a little bit under 60% passing. He has thrown 11 interceptions, so I think for New Mexico, they're trying to stay in that power running game. They have a good running back in Eli Sanders, who's got 4 touchdowns over the last 2 games. You're going to see a lot of these mixed up formations with extra linemen, tight ends, and honestly, it's a really hard defense or offense to scheme against as a defense. And I know Jeff Schmedding and Jake Dickert are going to have their hands full because you don't know, right? When you get unbalanced formation, there's so many things teams can do to you. And I think about a game last year, and I don't know if you'll remember this, but Cougs went down to play Arizona State in the desert, and the Sun Devils were really struggling at the time. And the head coach for Arizona State, Kenny Dillingham, who's a really bright offensive mind, he came out and almost exclusively the whole game ran unbalanced and gave the Cougs fits, and the Sun Devils beat Washington State. So again, there's some things on tape that could affect the Washington State defense if they don't come out ready to go.
Yeah, different type of offense, like you mentioned. They want to pack it in, and they'll run, obviously, some quarterback runs. You mentioned Eli Sanders to get running back over there. They'll play with an extra tackle. They'll bring their tight end. And what makes me think that there's going to be a lot of play action going on. I also look at this offense, and I wonder if Arbuckle will look at it and say, maybe I can use 1 or 2 of those runs or formations or sets because we do have a mobile quarterback as well. But when you have a guy in Dampier with over 800 yards rushing, you have a good running back in Eli Sanders as well back there, you're going to be dynamic on the ground. Defensively, New Mexico is bad against the run game. Same thing that we saw last week against the Aggies. Defensively, they give up a lot of points, the second most in the Mountain West. So I'm looking at this game again, check a couple of boxes. We knew that the Aggies were poor against the run. We ran the ball well. We knew they were going to give up at least 38, 39 points. You score over 40. There's some things that you have to carry over to the New Mexico game. Make this about you, because personnel-wise, you should win this football game. But when you have the dynamic quarterback and running back in the backfield that New Mexico has, big plays can happen. So it's about being disciplined with this team, but also making them continue to be who they are. They are a team in the Mountain West that has struggled against the competition. Let's not let them get started.
Yeah, I think 100% true. You talk about that defense. It's really interesting. They start out in kind of a more base 4-2-5 nickel type of defense, and they've transitioned back to that 3-3 stack that New Mexico had been known for a long time under legendary coach Rocky Long. I think some of that has to do with personnel, right? They just have the right personnel to run that 3-3 stack, and it's a unique look, something Washington State hasn't seen a ton of. And I agree that when you make the comparison to Utah State, it's about establishing the line of scrimmage and running the football again, because the Cougs should be bigger, stronger up front. They should be faster in the backfield. You obviously have Mateer's legs. I love that idea of focusing on you. The other X factor here, Bump, the Lobos are coached by a legendary coach in his own right, Bronco Mendenhall, over 150 wins between BYU, Virginia. He took this tough job at New Mexico, already has the Lobos at 4 wins, which is more than they've had in a long time. It's a little bit like playing San Jose State and Ken Niumatalolo, right? Like a guy that's seen a ton of ball, big games before. New Mexico is going to be up for this game because everybody's given the Cougs their best shot. A one-loss team going down to Albuquerque, it's their home stadium. They're going to be fired up, ready to go, and they're going to throw the kitchen sink at this thing.
This is one of the great things about what the Cougs are now, is that they are being hunted now. People are looking to knock them off. They see the 8-1 record. They see being ranked 19th in the CFP. They're hearing about John Mateer and this explosive offense, the takeaways that this defense has been getting, and now people are looking at them trying to knock them off. This is unfamiliar territory for this group. Last year you start off 4-0, you're ranked high, and then things kind of fall off from there, but they've been able to sustain this type of success. So I wonder what the messaging is. It's always about you and your team or whatnot, but these Cougs also got to understand that they have a reputation, and that is a great thing. It's great to be known and to be recognized and to have people understand who you are, but it also means that they're going to be ready to go. And you mentioned the head coach over there, Mendenhall. These guys are going to be coached up. He's going to have them motivated, ready to knock off the Cougs. How are they going to handle a different type of pressure?
Well, there's a formula for this, Bump. Winning on the road. If you do 2 things on the road, you have a good chance to win if you're the better football team. If you run the ball, and if you don't commit turnovers. Think back to San Diego State. Washington State couldn't establish the run. They had a big turnover on special teams that kept San Diego State in the game. I think for Washington State, they need to flip the script and they need to execute in those 2 phases, and they'll come away with a win. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Robert Portnoy, the play-by-play man for New Mexico, to break down more on the Lobos.
This segment is brought to you by Valley GMC. See you in the Valley.
All right, back now on Talkin Cougars. Super excited to be joined by the voice of the Lobos, Robert Portnoy. Robert, thanks for joining us. Could you, give us a little bit of a 10,000-foot view of where the program's at right now? Feels like new head coach Bronco Mendenhall is doing a fantastic job at New Mexico.
How about a mile-high view? That's about what we are here in Albuquerque, and that would be perfect. No, it's been quite the transformation, Alex. Coach Mendenhall is special. He's unlike any other coach in any sport that I've ever come across. And you can see the culture change in the program, and it's really starting to come to fruition. I mean, to be at this point with 2 games left in the regular season and have a chance to reach bowl eligibility in his first year with 42 transfers on the roster and 59 new players. I mean, that's sort of the transfer portal NIL world. I know that, but it's hard to make a culture shift that quickly when you have to turn over the roster like that. But he's done it, and it's been an amazing thing to watch, Alex.
Speak a little bit to his staff, some of the guys he's brought on. He has history with kind of both the coordinators, it looks like, and seem to have implemented both sides of the football schemes that fit a lot of those new players really well.
Yeah, coaches Beck and Howell on offense and defense, respectively. I think that you'll find the play calling from Coach Beck on the offensive side of the ball to be really creative. They run this jumbo package that they'll use anywhere on the field. They'll come out it in short yardage. They can do so many different things from it. They used it in the 4-minute drill to put away the game at San Diego State last weekend. It's so cool to see a true sophomore quarterback, Devin Dampier, coming into his own as a first-year starter. And on defense, Coach Howell, they're still finding their way, even with 2 games left in the regular season, and it's a work in progress. They've had their struggles. But last week in particular, Alex, to see the secondary as banged up as it was and so maligned early in the year, have to go deep into the depth chart and be able to finish off that game against the Aztecs. It was pretty impressive.
You mentioned that offense, and Coach Beck, my co-host here, Michael Bumpus, and I were commenting on kind of the unique formation, bringing in some heavy personnel and utilizing Dampier's legs. I mean, he is an electric football player. We have an electric player in our own right in John Mateer. Dampier's got more total yards than he does and more rushing yards. I mean, he can really go. Is he kind of the straw that stirs the drink for the Lobos?
There's no doubt about it. The only thing that's held him back this season is when the coaching staff wants to give him a little breather in the run game. Honestly, that's it. Like, they know that as he goes, so go the Lobos. And if anything were to happen to him, New Mexico's chances would go by the wayside. So they've been a little careful in how they use him in the design run game. But he's been incredible in the zone read. He has breakaway speed. We've seen that so many times over the course of 10 games. And then he doesn't get credit for the quality thrower that he is because of what he does in the run game. He can make all the throws, Alex. He can throw from the left hash to the far right sideline. And in fact, the only really bad pick that I've seen him throw this year, and there have been too many for sure, most of them have been trying to make something happen out of the pocket or late in a play when he should probably just tuck it away and live to fight another down. He did make a long one across the field that probably cost the Lobos a football game a couple of weeks ago, a pick six that kind of turned things around against Wyoming. Other than that, his decision-making has been great, too. He's the total package.
Well, and I got to imagine the emergence of Eli Sanders the last few games, 4 touchdowns the last 2 games, has got to be a big help in that running game as well and take some pressure off Dampier, right, having to do it all himself.
Yeah, Sanders' breakaway speed himself has really come into the forefront the last couple of weeks, in particular 2 big runs against San Diego State. It's interesting that the depth in the Lobo backfield was so great that early in the year it seemed like it was a different guy every week. It was Javen Jacobs, it was Eli Sanders, it was Soljay Maeva-Peters, it was Nakari Rogers. Well, injuries in the backfield kind of gave Sanders an opportunity to assume a more primary role, and the Iowa State transfer has really taken that ball and run with it. He's been unbelievable, and they've become quite the 1-2 punch in the running game. And don't shortchange him coming out of the backfield and catching a pass or two. He can do it all.
You mentioned a little bit the injuries in the defensive backfield. It's a unique scheme that Washington State's going to face this weekend. That kind of 3-3 stack front. As you think about the defense, on paper at least, there's been some challenges stopping the run and in general, slowing offenses down. What do they need to do to be successful against Washington State's offense?
Wow, I think the most important thing, and this has kind of been the thing that they've struggled to do throughout the year, but they've been starting to do it just a little bit more recently, is pressure the quarterback. If they can just do that and take a little bit of the pressure off the defensive backfield to cover for an extended period of time, that would make a huge difference. And they did it a little bit against San Diego State, and they were able to close out that game. The back end of the defense has been getting better, and the Lobos do have a really nice shutdown type corner in Bryson Taylor. Off-season injury to Tavian Combs, who was supposed to be the rock in the middle of the back line of the defense, forced transfer Noah Avenger from a cornerback position to a safety position. He has been a team leader from that spot since day one, but it did put extra pressure on the depth of the defensive backfield from the start of the year. I think the younger players that are getting an opportunity are really starting to find their way.
Thinking about that front 6 or 7, I guess, that might get pressure on John Mateer, who are the guys that Coug fans should look out for maybe to be able to get home?
Well, Gabe Lopez is the leader up front. He's one of the 4 team captains, and he definitely is a guy that's twitchy, that can get into a backfield and wreak some havoc. Kyler Drake is also an amazing athlete who's been nicked up all year and in and out of the lineup. And a player that's been really emerging here of late, who has become a starter, who's become a real difference maker up front, is Antonio Harris. So keep an eye out for him as well. The Lobos are rock solid as well in the linebacking core, and I think that you'll find that an emerging player on that level in Randolph Kapai is somebody to watch.
Well, that's awesome, man. We're looking forward to the game on Saturday night. I know I haven't been down to Albuquerque since my redshirt freshman year. Bump and I were both on that trip, so we're fired up to get down there. And probably be chilly, I got to imagine, but we're excited to see you and catch up. Thanks for joining us here on Talkin' Cougars. I'm back now on Talkin' Cougars. I'm former Washington State quarterback Alex Brink with Michael Bumpus. And Bump, it's the moment Coug fans have all been waiting for. The college football playoff rankings were announced this week, and the Cougs bumped up 3 spots from number 21 to number 18. So you're saying there's a chance, maybe?
Yeah, I guess there is a chance. I mean, we figured there was a chance, but we're trying to steady climb that ladder. And I appreciate it. 3 spots moved up. The one thing I don't like is that Colorado is still in front of us, a 2-loss team. The committee, I guess they have their reasons why. We were talking off air. It seems like they still have Kansas. We never know what's going to happen with that game. But no, the Cougs are in the mix. But like we mentioned several times on this show, it's all about handling business and doing what you're supposed to do. Boise State at 13, but technically they are still in. Georgia is out. I've been watching ESPN, doing my research, doing what I do. And people are upset that Georgia's not in. Georgia has Tennessee this weekend. We'll see if they can handle that. If they can beat Tennessee, then I guess that'll give them more reason to be in the mix. But it's about the Cougs, man. 18, I like the spot. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think I like the spot. I agree with you. There's some teams maybe ahead of them that you can make arguments about, but a lot is going to shake out over the next 3 weeks. The thing that I'm most afraid of, Bump, is a 3-loss SEC team finding their way into the playoff. Because if you look at Georgia, even if they lose to Tennessee, I mean, their resume of losses would be really good. I hate to say that, and I'm such a purist that I think if you have 3 losses and somebody else has 1, you probably shouldn't be in, but you know how these things set up. And then, even if the Cougs take care of business, they still need a lot of help along the way. You probably need a Notre Dame loss, okay? A BYU loss would have gone a long way if Utah had gotten them last week, right? Cougs could have gotten a ton of help. Think about last week. If Utah had beat BYU and Texas Tech had beat Colorado, you'd be talking about a whole different layout for Washington State. And now I think things get maybe a little slimmer, but as I said before, there is a chance for sure. I definitely want to see kind of how things play out the next couple weeks. There's going to be movement. There's no doubt about it. And Washington State's got a pretty unique chance to stay in the conversation here late into November.
Yeah, that's why I wasn't mad when Utah's AD hopped on the mic at the presser and let everybody know, look, I don't like what happened there. They stole the game from us. There was a 4th and 10 that was called back. A coach called timeout, and then there's a holding call on a DB, which you can call on every single play if you want to in football. Holding happens on every single down. So I was with them. Nothing came from that, but this is football, man. You're going to have opportunities to win the ball game. Utah still could have won that ball game. BYU still had to drive down the field, kick a field goal to win the game. But it is what it is, man. But I think the focus remains the same if you are Washington State. You just have to win your games. And I think you got to be impressive. That's why it's so important that they come out this week and you drop 40 on New Mexico and you hold them to under 20 points if you can, and you make it look pretty. Mateer continues to put up 3-4, be responsible for 3 or 4 touchdowns in the game. Parker continues to look like one of the best freshmen in the country. It's about style points now. You want to win ball games, that will take care of the rest for you, but it is about style points, and you're going to need some help. So I'll be scoreboard watching this weekend, that's for sure.
You make an interesting point about John Mateer. Think about when you're one of these teams, Bump, that's not an SEC program or a Big Ten program that's gotten propped up because the media, believes that level of football is so much better, right, in that part of the country or in that league. You need to have a marquee player, right? Somebody that you can tie your style points to. Think about Boise State, right? Half of their resume is because of Ashton Genty, right? Not only are they winning, but they have a marquee player that some believe is the best player in the country. And I think for Washington State, John Mateer's success goes a long way as creating that national brand for Washington State as they go down the college football playoff, kind of potential path, people will say, well, they haven't really beat anybody of consequence, and they lost at Boise. But boy, do they have one of the best quarterbacks in the country in John Mateer. So I think you're dead right. I think John Mateer needs to keep putting up 4, 5, 6 touchdowns a game so that Washington State can hang their hat on having that marquee player that maybe is a difference maker when you get into a 12-team college playoff.
Yeah, every team that's in the college football playoff, you have a face of the program, a guy who's doing something that makes you want to tune in and watch. And I think people might be catching on to Mateer. I think people are understanding that there's something special happening in Pullman, and it all starts with number 10. So let's see if we can win these ball games and look pretty wild doing it. I'm all for it, man. Hey, we got more coming up next here on Talkin' Cougars. I'm Michael Bumpus. That's my QB, Alex Brink.
Back now on Talkin' Cougars, I'm former Washington State quarterback Alex Brink, joined with my man and main wide receiver Michael Bumpus. Bump, it's been a good show. Cougs got a big one to go 9-1 down in Albuquerque, the New Mexico Lobos. It's gonna be a tough game for sure. I'm looking for Washington State to come out and dominate right from the jump. I think Utah State last week was a good indication of who this team can be and execute in all 3 phases. An important part we didn't talk about from last week's game, they got the punter, Nick Hauber, back, who's a real weapon in special teams. And now Janikowski can focus on just those kickoffs and just the field goals, doesn't have to worry about punting. Let's see if the Cougs can execute 60 minutes in all 3 phases.
Yeah, give my man Janikowski a break, man. He's held it down for a while, so you can rest a little bit now. I'm with you. You have to win the games you're supposed to win, and I think to impress the committee, you have to do it with some style. You got to go out there and put up 35, 40 points. The Lobos are giving up around 38 points a game as well. Aggies did last week. You got to go out there and look dominant on the ground. Get Parker the football, establish the run, and then you got to hit that quarterback. We talked about Dan Pierre, 800 yards rushing. Eli Sanders running back, 800 yards rushing. Hit those dudes. These linebackers, these defensive linemen have to come ready to play. Make it a physical game and then go win on the road, right? That was something that was hard for this team to do in the past, but I feel like they've kind of shaken that off. They understand who they are. They understand how to prepare themselves and get ready to win games on the road now.
Yeah, and for Washington State, you talk about style points, and the knock probably on them so far is that they haven't played great on the road, right? They've had some tight ones. Fresno State, San Diego State. They obviously lost at Boise. Now's the time for Washington State to show up. You win in November, and you got the whole world in front of you, and the Cougs have a huge opportunity come Saturday.
All right, man, Cougs got a reputation. Let's go. You guys travel. Make those flights to New Mexico and support our boys. That's going to do it for us, Talkin' Cougars, episode number 12. This weekend, I'll be in the studios for CW. You can catch me there. On Sunday, I'm on the broadcast, the pre-halftime and post-game show for the Seahawks. And then, of course, Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 on Seattle Sports, the Bumpus Station Show. Find me at Michael Bumpus5 on X and IG.
And I'll be down there with the team in Albuquerque on the call with the voice of the Cougs, Chris King, our play-by-play, our sideline analyst, Jessman McIntyre. Look forward to seeing the Cougs go out and get a W. You can find me on X at AlexBrink10. Thanks for joining us. That's it.